Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's great and fantastic and wonderful. Hope you had a good weekend. Boy, did I screw up this weekend. I screwed this whole base of this desk project up. Uh, sometimes I have good advice for myself, and most of the times I don't take it. I just go, screw it, let's do it anyway. And we talked a little bit ago about I was going to finish this with shellac. So this is Speedball Super Black. It's a form of India ink. And I was concerned about putting something with chemical dryers or anything like that on top of this because I didn't know what it would do. So I assumed shellac would be all right. Did some research, found out that maybe this actually contains a shellac binder. So I thought, well, if that's the case, then putting shellac on here might take the color off. And in some spots it did. In some spots it lifted the color. And I had my little test piece here, and I tried it on my little test piece, and it took some of the coloring off, but it turned out okay. So I thought, okay, I'll use shellac. Well, I had an old can of shellac, and I've recently discovered that, I've known, I didn't know the extent of it, but I discovered that shellac goes bad after a while, and that you should really not use it after, some people say, even just a few months. But I've never really had too much of an issue with it. And the manufacturer that I purchased the shellac from, Zinsser, says that their shellac is good for 3 years. So I said, okay. I bought myself some shellac flakes, and so I thought, I don't know how old that can is. I'm going to throw it away, and I'm going to make my own shellac for this project. Well, we went shopping a bunch this weekend to try to find denatured alcohol, the good stuff. I have the crappy stuff. If you buy just like the cheap can of denatured alcohol, it's mostly methanol, and it actually is probably about like 10 to 20% water. It's got a lot of water in it, and that's really not good for shellac. It'll get underneath some of it, and it has a hard time. It makes it look really weird. So you want to get Clean Strip, the Clean Strip green brand. Eco Green or something is what it's called, is like 90% alcohol. Like 90% ethanol and 10% methanol and like 1 or 2% water. That's the good stuff. Could not find it anywhere. Every place was sold out. And I really wanted to get this desk done this weekend. I have the kids this weekend. They're staying a couple extra days this week because they have the week off, and I thought it'd be nice to have them around. So I thought, cool, I've got like 5 days to get this thing done, and when we go back on Tuesday night, she can take it back with her and have her desk. And so, at the end of all of what I just said, I said, screw it, I'm going to use that can of bad shellac. If worse comes to worse, I have to sand it off and start over. Well, worse happened. I have to sand it off and start over. Or, something I've done in the past. So, I don't know if you can hear it. It's not setting up. It's leaving those all my thumbprints that I just it's tacky. It's been on here for 3 days now and it's still tacky. That's what happens when shellac goes bad. It doesn't it won't cure. It'll just stay tacky and it's gummy. And it is what it is. This didn't happen on my test piece, oddly enough. I don't think, but of course there's not enough shellac on here for me to notice. Actually, it is tacky. Never mind. It did happen on here. I just didn't think it did because it's really, I put it on here with a dauber, which is just like a rolled up piece of cloth, and so really thin coats. But the way that I use shellac is the more traditional method of flooding it on the first coat or two. I mean, just soaking a brush and just slathering it on, brush streaks and all. Leaves huge runs, no big deal. And then the second coat, you go with a little less slathering action, and it smooths out, it'll even out all of those runs. And then you sand it, and then you can start using a dauber and put on top coats. So I slathered this thing like I normally would, and it's just terrible. So I don't, the current plan is, I don't think I'm going to sand it off. I have dealt with tacky shellac in the past, and I didn't know why it was tacky, and the way that I deal with it is just paste wax. I usually top finish shellac with paste wax anyway. This is Minwax brand paste wax. I put it on with a Scotch pad. Actually, I went over this whole desk this yesterday, or maybe it was even Saturday. I think it was Saturday morning. I went over this whole desk with this, or no, it was yesterday morning, to try to get as much of the uncured finish off as I could. I got a bunch of the streaks and stuff out of it. There's still a few spots, but for what it is, I don't really care that much. That got rid of a lot of the really gumminess, and I will put the wax on also with a Scotch pad. I have some, I think there's some folded up Scotch pads in here. So when I put it on, it'll kind of cut in, and it'll get rid of the tackiness. The shellac underneath is never going to cure. It's not going to be a good finish. I would never, ever, ever do that on a customer's piece. It's only because this is my kid I can get away with it. Also because these parts, specifically this, the legs and the base aren't going to be holding anything. Nobody's going to set anything on them, so nothing's going to get stuck to it. If you were to set like a cup on here right now and come back in an hour, you'd have to, and it would like pop off, right? So wax over top of the sticky, it'll work fine. So I'm going to do it, but I've decided for the top, I actually have it fully cut down and sanded now. This will be the top, all nice and pretty. I'm going to use wipe-on poly. I'm not a huge fan of polyurethane. I think it feels icky and tacky. But for this particular application, that is going to be beside her desk. It's going to probably get moisture and stuff on it. It's probably good to seal it good. So probably 6 coats of wipe-on poly. I'll do 3 on the whole piece and then 3 extra on the top to protect it, and then wax on the base. Surprisingly enough, I think it's because the shelf, the bottom shelf, is also black, and I also shellacked it. But I think that shelf was like a southern pine, like not a spruce or a fir, but a southern yellow, and it soaked up the vast majority. It's not tacky, so it's going to be a shelf and stuff's going to sit on it. But I think it cured okay, and with the wax on top, I think it'll be fine. We'll see. I mean, if all else fails, I'll rebuild the thing. I had the fun of designing it. I had the fun of using threaded inserts for the first time. I had the fun of, the way I attach the feet and the whole knockdown stuff using the India ink. So I've already got all the lessons out of the way, and next time I can do it a little bit more thoughtful, and, if I have to remake it, I have to remake it. I'll make it better. It's that simple. But I will say, I wish I had kept the dauber. It's probably in there. Using the shellac on top of the India ink. Now, the way I put the India ink on was with a foam brush, and I just soaked it on. I didn't wipe on thin coats. 1 coat, really heavy, just slathered on there and let it go. I didn't wipe it off, nothing. Just let it dry. Shellac on top of that. Yeah, the dauber, I used a white cloth. The dauber did turn black, but unless you really rub in an area, unless you really went aggressively rubbing, it didn't take off enough of the top layer of ink for it to matter. Oh, I will say, I slathered this on with a foam brush. After it dried, I went over the whole thing with a white pad. So if there was a whole bunch of loose ink sitting on top, I knocked it off with this. Then tack clothed it, then shellacked it. And the shellac did not immediately peel all of the black off. That was a good thing. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But live and learn, I guess. It's one of those learning projects. What are you going to do? What'd you do this weekend? Anything exciting? That's about it for me. Did this and played some board games. We played Machi Koro 2. Really enjoyed it. I wasn't a huge fan of the original Machi Koro. Machi Koro 2 feels great. It feels really good. We played it probably, 4, 5, 6 times. My kid keeps asking for it, so probably play it again some more, tonight and tomorrow. Don't know. But let me know what you did in the comments. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends, wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is insular. It's an adjective meaning self-contained and therefore isolated from the world and unaffected by outside influences, usually to one's detriment. The Price Waters moved from the family tradition enclave to more insular compound further up the coast. Insular. I-N-S-U-L-A-R. I think that that's a good word to describe West Virginia. West Virginia is very insular from the national economy and the national story. And I've said it before, but very little of the national stuff affects life here. Which is a good and a bad thing. Like, we have no economy, so therefore our economy doesn't get hurt.